Let's face it, I'm usually falling asleep.
Wait, if we didn't say anything, no one could tell. Because you talk that much.
Uh-huh.
You're such a vital part of the podcast.
So much so.
So much so. At any rate, let's put our intro in and talk about things. Hey, you guys! Alright, Jason, talk about things.
Things? Alright. More specifically, I picked up Destiny from the library. I haven't had a chance to play it yet.
Nice.
But I did play Lego Batman 3 a little earlier this week. That was kind of fun.
How is it?
Not bad.
I thought 2 was good. I'm just curious about 3.
The thing is I haven't played a lot of it, but it starts out with Brainiac capturing the other Lanterns, and then a bunch of the villains break into the Watchtower to use. Is that the right word? Is that the right term for their space station?
Yeah.
Yeah. Lex Luthor, Joker, and some others break into the Watchtower to use this cannon that they have on the Watchtower, which doesn't make any sense to me.
They have a cannon. It's actually canon, literally.
Yeah.
They have canyons in the canyon?
There's a cannon on the Watchtower, and it's canon, or canonical.
Is it in a canyon?
No.
Anyway,
there was no canyon involved.
Do they have canyons in their canyon?
Theoretically, the cannon can cause a canyon.
Well, that's what Lex Luthor wants to use it for. He wants to use it to blackmail everybody into making him president.
Well, there was actually...
it's a good plan, to be fair.
There was actually a moment where they had to deal with it, where they were dealing with some huge, world-ending threat, and the entire Justice League went to show up. It was on one of the Justice League TV shows.
Uh-huh.
And they couldn't deal with it, so they fired their super cannon off of the Watchtower.
Right.
To help destroy the thing, and it was this big deal and whatnot. And it helped to fix the problem. Mm-hmm. But afterward, politically, there was a lot of anger towards the Justice League, because not only are they ridiculously powerful, but they have this giant cannon pointed at the Earth.
Right.
And they're like, we don't like this.
Well, who would? And the thing is, I'm sitting here going, you have the greatest superheroes on Earth. You have Superman, who's practically, for all intents and purposes, the most powerful superhero
he
on
is
Earth.
the most powerful, but he can't punch everywhere at once.
Right.
It's true.
And they've got this giant doomsday weapon on their space station.
Yep.
Anyway.
Nobody wants to live under a loaded gun.
Yeah, and that's,
But that's what I used to use for one of those dangly things above my crib.
Yeah.
Loaded weapons.
You had loaded guns on your mobile?
Yeah, on my baby mobile.
Anyway.
This makes so much more sense why he's the way he is.
They're all pointed down. And there was a shotgun in the middle.
He grew up looking at guns. It's
No,
amazing that he isn't more warped and twisted, right?
I don't even own a gun. I'm just saying, they dangled above my crib while I slept. Loaded. Weirdly enough, they tied the triggers.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know why they didn't go off, but...
well, you gotta discipline your children, people. You gotta start them young and early. Guns in the cradle.
There you go.
Guns in the cradle and the silver spoon.
Instead of Guns N' Roses, new band, Guns in the Cradle.
Do you ever have you seen Axl recently?
No, I haven't.
This is gonna make me sound like a black lady at a barber shop, but man, did he get fat! Nice. Axl Rose used to be a decent looking fella, and man, he went south.
Yeah.
They usually do.
Basically.
I mean, have you seen Mick Jagger?
Well, Mick Jagger never looked good.
I know, but it's always funny to me that people, used to think he was all that, and I'm just going like, really?
He looked like a caricature that's drawn on, like, the boardwalk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just his facial features are literally as exaggerated. And as he got older, he just looked like the skeleton version of the caricature.
True. Let's see, what else? I've been watching The Crow.
Yeah, you talked to me about that.
I went through the I was about to say trilogy, but it's not a trilogy, it's a quadrilogy. Because there's 4 movies in the Crow franchise. The first one, good. Second one, not good. And the third one was going to be released into theaters, but it went direct to video because the second one was so bad compared to the first one.
Yeah.
The third one, okay. Not as good as the first one, definitely better than the second one. The fourth one was just, there was a definite reason why it was released direct to video. But then I was also watching Stairway to Heaven, which is the name of the television show that was based on it.
I remember seeing some episodes of that.
Yeah, they got it wrong. Really wrong. I mean, there's no atmosphere. And the Crow, he gets brought back because he's supposed to take revenge and set things right, well, in the movie, that means killing the bad guys. Right?
Right.
In this show, that means either driving them crazy or turning them over to the police. I mean, seriously, I can understand why it never made it past 1 season.
Well, you can't have a TV show that's solely about a character that comes back to life to cause murder.
Yeah. And it might have worked better if they'd given it the gothic atmosphere. I mean, it's too bright and sunny, and everything's happening during the daytime.
Well, it doesn't help that the Crow skips a lot.
Yeah. And the Crow, the character himself, is not dark enough. He, cracks jokes and stuff.
He's not supposed to crack jokes. He's the Crow.
And so...
What was he riding on, like a merry-go-round going, wee?
Not quite that bad.
He's like, I'm the Crow, wee!
But like I said, I can totally see why it never made it past 1 season, because it just... It was wrong. They got the whole thing wrong. It wasn't dark enough, like I said. The atmosphere of the movies was dark. I mean, everything happened at night. In the first one, it was always raining. In this one, things are happening in the daytime. He's turning into the Crow and switching back and forth. He, gets a life. He ends up being a bouncer at this club that he used to perform at.
What, the Crow needs a job?
Yeah.
He's a bouncer.
The Crow's out of work, needs money to fund revenge.
Exactly. And,
by day, I'm a bouncer. By night, revenge. I'm also undead, the Crow.
he actually...
That's one heck of a job resume. I think
about halfway through the series, he gets put on trial for the murder of his girlfriend. Because, obviously... he can't have come back he can't have been murdered and come back from the dead. Right. That just doesn't make any sense to people. So what was obviously happening here is he got tossed out the window, but it was only a fake out. So he faked his death and hired these guys to kill his girlfriend because he was jealous.
What?
Yeah.
That is pretty terrible.
And it gets worse, because, there's been 2 times where he's kissed another woman.
What a hypocrite, crappy...
Once was justified because his girlfriend's spirit jumped into her body, so it was her.
This is that kind of show.
What?
Like I said, it just didn't even evoke the spirit of the original movie. I think they could have gotten away with it a little bit better if they had started out with the legend and stuff of the crow, and maybe even touched on, it happened here and things, and then introduced a new crow.
The original theme of the crow is, if you die, you just become a goth and you can get revenge.
Right.
South Park teaches you that as well.
Yeah. Goth kids.
Goth kids. What was it that was worse than a goth kid on that show?
A ginger.
Well, gingers are always worse, but...
Gingers are soulless.
Yes.
They literally established that as canonical in the show. Like they have no souls.
I think it was emo. Emo kids were worse than goth kids. Like, the goth kids hated the emo kids.
You know what was the worst combination? Jewish gingers. Which,
So if you're redheaded,
Kyle
stepchild, and Jewish...
Kyle was a ginger and he was Jewish. And that's what they decided was like the worst combo.
Was he a stepchild?
No.
Oh. Well, at least he doesn't have that stigma.
Kid you not, I literally met a redheaded stepchild.
I remember you talking about that.
I met a kid who was literally a redheaded stepchild.
I'm trying to think of all the wives my dad have had, if any of them were redheaded kids.
Wait. Any of your stepmoms? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because my stepmoms have had kids, like almost, I think all of them. I'm trying to remember if any of them were redheaded.
So how many wives has your dad had?
Let's not get into this.
5, 6, I don't know.
Let's.
He sounds like he's from Kentucky.
Let's move on.
Mississippi? Louisiana? Somewhere around there.
Let's move on. Lindsay, what did you do? Anything nerdily interesting?
Well, not interesting.
Alright, moving on. Anything? Let's not get into a big discussion about your roommate.
Oh, we're not going to.
Lindsay did some homework, studied, and stuff. These things happened. That's your week. Yeah?
Yeah. I'm trying to think if I did anything fun at all. Nope, I got nothing.
Alright. I played a lot of Bloodborne. And that game is really good. I don't know why, but it's sucking me in. The combat's really good. The plot and how the story is structured is really good. I'm quite enjoying the game, and I finally made some progress. Yesterday, I beat a boss that took me forever to beat. And then this morning, I beat another boss that took me forever to beat. So I'm progressively moving towards the story. As the story moves forward, day turns into night.
Uh-huh.
And enemies act differently, and different enemies like show up and stuff. I was going down this one path, and there's usually like some crows or whatever on the side, and there was this dude in this giant cloak, and I was like, what are you? And he attacked me, and he hit so much harder than everything else, and I was getting all creeped out.
Uh-huh.
And I killed him, and I moved on, and I did some other stuff. Anyway, he respawned at one point, and I screwed up rolling or whatever, and he killed me. And then they sent me to this dungeon, and I was like, okay, this is new, and I'm forced into this whole new area, and I was like, I guess I forget everything I was working on before, because I have to deal with this. The game is interesting. It's so much fun.
So, because you failed to kill the guy, you got sent to the dungeon, or?
Yeah, it was this whole new area I've never seen before. It was fascinating.
But if you had killed him, it wouldn't have happened?
No, I wouldn't.
Huh.
That's interesting.
But yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in that game. It's a lot of fun. I've been playing a lot of it. We'll see how stuff goes in the future. I could talk about that game a lot, but we're not gonna. Other than that, the reason why Lindsay's here is me and Lindsay just watched Daredevil, the first episode of the new series on Netflix that came out today, which Chance was messaging me about to see, because he's like, man, this is really good. And I was like, all right. So we watched it. Lindsay's, what's your reaction?
It's pretty good so far. It's actually got some tones to it that actually seem very comic-like in its representation. It
very, very much fits the comic book. And what I mean by that is it's gritty, but almost to the right degree. Because they could have gone too gritty, and it would have felt off. It's like, oh, you got to make a... It's like if they had a superhero movie, and then Christopher Nolan got attached to it, and then he tried to make it really gritty. It might have worked, but, it felt like they were just doing gritty for gritty's sake. This one, actually, the tone was almost exactly like the Daredevil comics are, which is really curious. And they start square one. They start, like, the first few days of doing stuff in Hell's Kitchen. His first case he picks up after, 7 hours of being a lawyer. So it's very fresh, and everything's new. He doesn't even have the outfit yet, but the show is really good so far.
That's a turn in the right direction, I would say.
Yeah, it's a nice, fresh breath of air, honestly, considering a lot of the crappy stuff they've been just trying to shovel out lately.
Yeah.
It actually fits into the Marvel Universe right now, too.
Oh, that's good.
They don't specifically say anything, but they talk about how there's a lot of money pouring into New York because half of New York was destroyed on live television.
Uh-huh.
Hence the Avengers movie.
Right.
And they actually sort of passingly refer to other superheroes. every time they punch guys through a wall, their money goes up because they get to buy real estate and what have you. So it's curious. He, as far as the guy playing Matt, he doesn't look like I expected him to, but he plays him fairly well. I think Foggy was a really good cast. He actually fits really well for the character.
Any jarring choices so far?
The last episode I saw, I actually got a little excited because they had this one specific moment where it's the first time you see the Kingpin on episode 3.
Uh-huh.
And he turns and says something, and it was perfect because it wasn't like saying that really cool line at the end or anything. It actually fit really well with the show, and I was really excited. Kingpin actually looks like Kingpin.
Oh, that's good. A big, fat, bald, white guy?
Yeah, exactly. Tall, big, fat, bald. We'll see where it goes. The only part that seemed a little goofy is he seemed normal and doing everything just fine, but on episode 3, he had this almost like Batman voice moment.
Uh-huh.
Where I was like, you sound like you're doing a Batman voice. It's like, swear to me. I was like, really, Daredevil?
Like you sound so much.
Was it Ving Rhames that did Kingpin in the Daredevil movie?
Yeah.
Now, I've been impressed with his acting.
I've always liked Ving Rhames every time I've seen him in a movie.
Uh-huh.
Oh, no,
I felt
Ving
he
Rhames.
did...
No, it wasn't Ving Rhames.
Oh, wait.
What are you talking about?
It was that one guy.
Yeah, I forget his... Michael Clark Duncan.
Yeah, he passed away recently.
He did. A year or two ago.
But he's another one. I've been impressed with his acting as well.
Yeah, he was in Green Mile.
Yeah. But the thing is that... And while I felt he did a good job in the role that as the Kingpin, he was intimidating, he was...
I don't know. He didn't come across as that intimidating to me, and the role just felt wrongly cast.
But I think that part of that... I was going to say, for me, it felt wrongly cast because he didn't match the image in my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it needs to have a little bit of sophistication, and I think they just cast a really big, bald guy, as opposed to really... Because clearly he's not white, so they had to make him into some sort of a gangster role, and it didn't pull off very well.
Yeah.
If you ever watch the director's cut, it actually is better, because there's a bit more cursing, and Kingpin seems a little bit more dangerous. And it's like, well, it actually is a little bit darker this time around and stuff. But, yeah, I really like the show. It's really good.
That's
so
good
far, at least. But I'm definitely knee-deep in Bloodborne right now. Finding it hard to pull away and play anything else. So I'm just going to have to keep at it until it stops.
It's going to be Bloodborne for the next couple weeks, people.
Yeah, you're going to get a lot of Bloodborne conversation.
Okay, I may have to send you the link to these webcomics, but there's a webcomic called Sheldon, and the guy that writes it, he says, Daredevil's announced, Daredevil. Netflix has announced TV shows for Daredevil, as well as he calls it, super obscure characters like Iron Fist, Luke Cage, and Jessica Jones. And he calls it, Netflix presents the bottom of the barrel. And then he says...
Luke Cage and Iron Fist, definitely. Daredevil is above the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
Right. But he's the way he's using it is he's kind of showing what else Netflix could do, because he says MODOK and Friends, and he's got Chandler,
really?
Rachel, Ross, Joey, and MODOK.
Really?
And then Frog Thor, all the might and power of a Thor in a frog.
Nice.
It says, this for realsies happened.
It did. Thor got turned into a frog.
And then Marvel's Paste Pot Pete.
Well, let's just remind ourselves that Luke Cage and Iron Fist and Jessica Jones were all characters that were working in the same areas
as Daredevil.
And at some point crossed over as Daredevil and whatnot. And if they pull off these shows, and if they're just as good as Daredevil, they can have crossovers very easily. Almost like a superhero gang that sort of cleans up the streets.
And this could actually be good, because these...
It could be really good.
These superheroes may not be, at least right now, big enough to pull a movie audience. But this could be really good for a series, a TV series.
Daredevil is big enough to pull a movie audience,
yes,
but he works really well with the TV right now, and his character, his persona can help elevate the other ones.
Yeah,
which
true.
I think is a benefit.
And they could do crossovers with this series and with the others.
Yeah,
very easily. The other one is there's a couple more. There's Roomies with the Watcher.
Yeah.
And then, let's see.
He just watches you while you sleep is the problem.
Yeah. Rom Space Knight.
Really?
Yeah. Namor. It's so funny. The catchphrase is, Namor, you will believe a nude Vulcan can fight crime.
Essentially.
He puts Moon Knight in here, and he says, I'm legally obligated to say I'm not Batman.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then The Odd Couple starring Galactus and Ego, the living planet.
I'm surprised Galactus doesn't eat Ego.
Well,
anyway, I think the show's pretty good, but if you get a chance, check it out. It's worth your time.
I'll see what I can do. That sounds interesting. You guys, especially Rhett. I mean, I know how much you love Daredevil. I'm not as big a Daredevil fan as you are. And so when you say that it's good and it's true to the tone of the comic, that's, in my opinion, that's a big plus for it.
Yeah, as picky as I am about Daredevil and stuff, it is a good plus. Like, it could go weird later on, but so far, so good.
And that I think is a big plus in its
It's
favor.
like the show could be awesome, everything could be going great, and then they introduce, like, Bullseye, and he sucks.
Yeah.
True.
So we'll see how it goes.
You know that
I really like him as Bullseye. He's a neat character.
Well, you already know
creepy.
that they're planning to introduce Bullseye. There's no way that they could get away with a Daredevil show and not introduce Bullseye.
It's like having a Batman and not having Joker.
Yeah.
Yep.
Bullseye is Daredevil's Joker.
Yeah.
And the worst part about Bullseye is, as much as Joker is chaos and murder and whatnot, Joker just does crap and whatever he wants to just cause problems. He'll kill people, but not just for the sake of killing.
Right.
Bullseye kills people, and he giggles when he does it. So it's like having a really good serial killer.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with Bullseye.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that they will eventually introduce Elektra.
That's what I was actually wondering is what they'll do with that.
Hopefully they don't do it until like season 2.
Yeah.
You would hope so, but a lot of the times those
well, it's one of those
these
things
series
where
try to just name drop all over the place.
Yeah. The thing is
Gotham.
that they've got to pace themselves. There's so much that they can cover with Daredevil and Elektra and Bullseye and all that stuff. But if they go too fast, they just inundate you with all the lore from the Daredevil comic rather than pacing it out and leaving some of it off to further seasons. They're going to get, I think, kind of a meltdown.
Yeah.
Fans' brains will explode.
Well, the show will start to fall apart too early.
Yeah.
They got to drag it out. They got to get us to invest. But yeah, we do have Chance's email, but I'm probably going to let Lindsay sneak away.
I actually forgot, but I actually did play games this week. It's so rare that I didn't think about it.
What did you play?
A couple Xbox games. I had a friend come over, and she doesn't really play games, so we played I made a game with zombies in it, which is a fun one that anyone can really play.
Yep.
Pretty much.
It costs $1.
It's only $1. It's what the song says.
It is what the song says.
Well, Chance's email. Let's go ahead and roll the intro.
Sweet.
And now it's time for the Distracted Gamers podcast listener emails, where Dr. Jason will paraphrase, eviscerate, and with surgical precision, remove all salient points from your feedback, leaving you sounding like a barely literate baboon.
Is very short.
Well, he told me he did that on purpose. The reason being, he doesn't want you to murder it. So
what?
I was like, you're learning, Chance.
What am I going to do for the rest of the episode?
I don't know. Murder something else, he says.
Oh, okay. He says, hope you had a good week. Have you been gaming? What games? He picked up 2 Worlds, Rule of Rose, and a Sega Master System.
Did he get Rule of Rose complete in box? Because he sold that in the past.
No details.
Yeah, because isn't that worth quite a bit of money, if I recall?
Possibly. He hopes that you got in touch with the Retro VGS guys. And then he says, peace, kill Aunt May. Hashtag kill Aunt May. You know.
Well, short and sweet.
Yep.
I've been talking off and on with Chance. He's trying to break the whole pregnant thing online on Facebook. And his idea was this somewhat inappropriate image, and his wife got all pissed off with him. And I was like, well, she should. It was an image from behind of a lady's legs wide open, and it was something like "get ready to catch in 8 months" or something like that.
Yeah, just a bit insensitive and inappropriate. She
got upset and said that it was something about him wanting to go to the trailer park or whatever. And he said he had already been there. At any rate, let's see.
Was already grounded because his wife has been home all week.
Yeah, his wife's been home all week, and he's been forced to cuddle.
Forced.
And so he's been watching a lot of Netflix and Hulu Plus.
Actually,
Snuggle Hound?
Yeah.
The breed that we came up with?
Yeah, what
no,
were
he
the...
came up with it.
He came up with the name, and then we figured out what dogs would make up the Snuggle Hound.
What was it? A Schnauzer, Pug, Bloodhound mix or something?
Yeah.
Is it
I think that was
Hound?
it.
It's an ugly dog.
Yeah.
Incredibly ugly.
Yeah, at any rate, we do have news to cover the rest of the podcast, stuff to check out. So we'll put in our news up here and enjoy whatever.
The Distracted Gamer Podcast's big steaming pile of news dump.
Alright. News section, news dump. If you haven't listened to it before, we're going to go through as many stories as we can that are relevant to geeky, nerdy junk, so that you can actually listen to all the news as opposed to actually care and look it up later.
Nice.
Let's see. usually the Kotaku stories are all crap, but I don't know. I'll reserve some of these for later.
I have a news dump item. I don't know if it's on your radar.
Go ahead.
Terry Brooks, another favorite author of mine, wrote a series, and they're turning one of his books into an MTV series. Unfortunately, it sounds like it's going to be horrible.
Really?
Well, first of all, it's a fantasy series, so magic, elves, and all that stuff, and it's going on MTV.
I don't know. MTV's been fairly useless for quite some time.
Yeah. And then they released the list of actors who are going to be involved with the project, and they introduced 2 characters that are not in the book. And, you know, I don't mind if they're introducing new characters if it makes sense, but it really doesn't. Because the books are chock full of characters. Why did they need 2 new ones?
I don't know. It's because whenever anything's created that's already based off of something else, they have to put their own mark on it. Because it's never the author that's actually writing it. Somebody actually creates a screenplay for it.
Right.
Because writing a book is a lot different than writing a screenplay.
Right. But they're like, yeah. So anyway, it's the Elfstones of. I always pronounced it Shannara, but I got a book on tape of it, and they pronounced it Shannara, which makes it sound like there's an E in it, but there isn't. So whatever. So MTV is going to be doing that, and like I said,
it'll suck.
I'm already cringing.
I don't think I've seen anything MTV's done in a long time that's been worth a darn.
Yeah. I mean, it could be surprisingly good, you know, but it's like they've already got 2 characters in there that I'm like, why are you putting them in there? They make no sense to the plot.
Because they want to.
So.
So we have news. So there's a new Dragon Ball anime coming out, movie.
Oh.
And Goku, in this one, is going to have blue hair. Now, apparently, the only way to... the explanation I saw was the last movie that they did, Goku fused with the Saiyan God.
Uh-huh.
And he became the Saiyan God temporarily. Apparently, the blue hair is when you're a Saiyan God and you go Super Saiyan. So it's Super Saiyan, Saiyan God. Don't ask me why, but blue hair. I know you're excited. Moving on. Here's an interesting story that you'll actually find curious. 30-year-old Hubert Wingate of Homewood, Pennsylvania, a Pittsburgh suburb, has been charged for the murder of Andre Gray, whose body was found last month after he disappeared from his Lawrenceville home in October. Wingate, who clearly isn't that smart, was tracked down by police after using the victim's PlayStation. According to Pittsburgh police, Wingate logged in one time the same day as the day the victim went missing, using Gray's PlayStation Network account and his own email address. He later logged onto the PlayStation Network using the same machine but a different account name. The game system was one of several items stolen from Gray's home back in October. Police used the IP address to track down where the game system was being used, which ultimately led police to Wingate's mother's house.
Oh, that's
smart
so
criminals.
bad.
Smart criminals doing smart things.
Yeah.
At least video games being used for good to
at that time,
people. Yeah.
So he killed the guy, stole a bunch of stuff from his house,
and then logged into PlayStation Network using his PlayStation, and they can track it based on serial numbers and stuff. Right. Let's see. We have okay. No one from DMA Designs, the company that created the original PC strategy game series, GTA, who were one of the original design teams for Grand Theft Auto, is involved in the BBC's upcoming dramatization about the game's creation, according to what DMA Designs writer Steve Hammond tells Games Radar. Reported last month, the film is based on David Kushner's 2012 book, Jacked, The Outlaw Story of Grand Theft Auto. Apparently they are making a Grand Theft Auto movie for the BBC based upon the creation of the game.
That sounds so stupid.
Yeah, it does sound stupid, and I don't know if they expect, because of the popularity of the game, that there will be interest in this, but they do realize a lot of the popularity with the game revolves around immature kids who probably aren't interested in a documentary about its creation.
Yeah.
Moving on, Amazon has had enough of sites that allow people offering products in its digital store to buy phony reviews. The company has sued 4 sites in Washington court, alleging that their activities undermine its review system, which customers rely on heavily to make informed decisions. Sites being sued include BuyAmazonReviews.com, BuyAmazonReviews.com, and BayReviews.net, and BuyReviewsNow.com. Amazon also claims that these sites are engaging in trademark infringement violations of local consumer protection statutes and cyber squatting laws. It is seeking injunction forbidding these sites from writing any more reviews and monetary damages. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with them shutting them down. It's kind of they create a thing because they know that people just want to get the free money, but
right,
or the free reviews and stuff. Anyway, The Verge has an interesting report detailing what could be the first Apple Watch game, an RPG called Runeblade. Runeblade is creation of developer Eyewear Games, who describes the game as a fantasy adventure game on your wrist. This is retarded. Moving on. Apparently, Kratos is set to be in Shovel Knight as a character or something. I guess in the new iteration that they're coming out for PS4. Moving on, rights group Amnesty International, Liberty and Privacy International, and others have announced that it will take its fight against security agencies such as GCHQ in the United Kingdom conducting mass surveillance and data collection on British citizens to Europe's highest court. We'll see if this actually goes anywhere. The most monitored and camera-covered place in the world is London. And it's been a huge deal of controversy. Now, the reason why the cameras are there is because of the IRA. The amount of bombings and murders that have occurred because of it. Whether or not they'll actually be able to bring this to court is another story. As soon as you let a government do something, it's hard to get them to unring that bell.
To stop it?
Yeah. So I severely doubt this is going to go anywhere, but you never know.
It could set a precedent, but it's one of those things.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
Grand Theft Auto 5 has now come out for the PC this last week. Which the game has probably been out for, a year and 6 months or 3 months or something like that. But it's finally out for the PC, so people can actually do stuff like modding it, which they've wanted to forever. Took Rockstar a very long time to release this.
Yeah.
But,
surprisingly long time. Shoot,
they released a next-gen upgraded new graphics versions for the Xbox One and the PS4 way before the PC version.
Yeah, that's true.
Apparently, the physical copy PC version is like 7 discs or something.
Wow.
Because the game is so flippin' big. A North Carolina man will finally have the first of many days in court to answer for a 4-week crime spree that included stealing a car and robbing a GameStop in Mecklenburg County, among a litany of other crimes alleged by police in multiple counties throughout the state. I guess the story exists solely because of the robbing a GameStop, but authorities say he was wanted in connection with other GameStop Walmart robberies in North and South Carolina. Interesting. Developer Toy Logic accidentally released its free-to-play RPG battle game, Happy Wars, on Xbox One but quickly pulled it offline. Unfortunately, anyone who managed to play the game before it was pulled down found out, to their horror, that they couldn't play the game on Xbox 360 afterward. The developer admitted its mistake on Facebook page and warned others about this odd side effect. Worst of all, if you play the development build of the game on Xbox One and subsequently broke the Xbox 360 version of the game, Toy Logic has no solution for you at the moment. The game will remain broken until the developer comes up with a fix, and it is insane when that fix is coming beyond the next title update.
Huh.
Curious.
Yeah.
A new study from Monash University using brain mapping in first-person shooter games may have some answers on how people find moral justification for extremely violent acts. Researchers at Monash University, led by Dr. Pascal Molenbergs, director of the University's Social Neuroscience Laboratory, conducted a study where they asked participants to imagine, while watching scenes from a violent video game, themselves shooting innocent civilians. In some cases, and in others, asked them to imagine enemy soldiers. As they completed the mental exercises, researchers mapped the activity of the part of the brain associated with unconscious moral decision-making. According to the data collected by researchers, brain activity changed depending on whether or not they believed the killing was justified or not. Some people seem to have problems with switching back because they kind of learned over a very long period to kind of switch off their emotions. And then, if you then return to a normal situation where you again don't have to fear for your life, but just have to engage in a normal type situation, there seems to be having problems with trying to switch it on again. One of the goals of the study is basically to train people to become more empathetic and to become more morally sensitive to specific types of situations. So you can imagine that some people who commit extreme violence through therapy and through training can become more moral over time.
Huh.
Reactions?
That's interesting that they would do that. It seems like it's also going to be used as fodder to attack video games. And they're going to say, well, it may not cause violence, but, this desensitization can't be good. And
well, it clearly stated that apparently they made a moral line between, like, enemy soldiers and simply civilians.
Right.
Like, they could justify one, whereas the other one, like, the brain activity changed because there were less justification.
Right, but the thing is that if they can get people to move that line, what's to say that they're going to leave it where, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Sweet.
My reaction is that it seems kind of like a waste of time, but...
Well, most of these studies are, and it seems like the goal for them is to try and get... It's that whole... The old adage of trying to... fix, or through therapy, or, to try and cure certain people who have violent tendencies or who do horrific crimes. It's like the idea of you can recuperate a human being who has gone too far in certain situations. Like, no matter what, well, he killed a guy, but we can fix him. I was like, no, he killed a guy. It's just, you don't go back after that. There's no sort of like, well, let's just sit down and hug each other and talk it out, and eventually he'll feel better and he won't murder again.
Yeah.
You can't social engineer just evil like that. You just can't. I'd hate to have to generalize it like that, but you just can't. Sociologists think that they can, but they absolutely can't.
Well, there's some types of antisocial behavior that can't be fixed, while there are other types of antisocial behavior that can. I guess I shouldn't say antisocial behavior. I should say antisocial people. Sociopaths, for instance, can't be fixed. There's something missing.
Well, you've looked at, like, recidivism rates.
Yeah.
I mean, recidivism is so bad, which is the term for when people go to prison, the likelihood of them going back.
Of them going back into prison.
If they go to prison once, the likelihood of them returning shoots up dramatically.
Yeah.
And it's just the people who are willing to go so far to go to that point probably are willing to do it again. It's just the truth. They morally cross the line, and they can't unring that bell.
Well, there's also a lot of stigma involved with being in prison.
But I don't think that whole I can't get a job because I was a prisoner, therefore I'm going to go shoot a guy.
No, I'm not saying that is it's a justification. I'm not saying it's a justification in any way. I'm saying that there's a lot of stigma, and so that stigma does make it difficult for people to come out of prison and stay out of prison.
I don't know about that.
They fall back into familiar patterns, and the familiar pattern is, I'm going to go rob that guy because I can't make any money any other way.
I don't know about that. Anyway,
that being said, I believe it's more the individual than it is the stigma, but I do think that stigma doesn't help.
Well, it doesn't help, but I don't think it's a factor as to why people return to prison. I think, honestly, what I think it is if you're willing to do a crime that puts you in prison, and let's say you're in there for 30 years for, like, manslaughter or something.
Right.
You get out, and you're more likely to do the crime again. Why? Because you were willing to cross that line before, and now it's easier to do so because your moral blocks aren't in place. You also know it's not the end of the world because you were in prison, and as much as it sucks, that's the devil you know.
Right.
You can handle going to prison, and it's not the end of the world.
And see, this is why that video game study is nonsense. The people, while they were in the video game, they were moving that moral line based on the circumstances, civilians versus enemy soldiers. Well, that line went right back to where it was when they after a few minutes.
Yeah.
It's not like it was a permanent move. Once this if you apply this to people in prison, it's not like you're going to rehabilitate them with video games. They'll get done. They'll go back to their cell a few minutes later. Their morals are back where they used to be.
Anyway, moving on. A Minneapolis man has been charged with allegedly stealing more than $1,000 of video games and game systems from an 8-year-old boy who was visiting him while he was a patient at Bethesda Hospital in St. Paul. The 43-year-old man, identified as Dave A. Schmotter, allegedly stole a case containing the video game-related items and hung it on his intravenous stand while the boy and his mother were distracted during a visit in November of last year. But what Schmotter didn't count on was that the hospital had surveillance cameras. After reviewing the tapes, hospital security retrieved the case and called the police. The case contained 2 Nintendo DS gaming systems and 30 to 40 video games that were worth over $1,000. The Star Tribune has more on the story, blah, blah, blah. Postal was rejected from Google Play for gratuitous violence, which is unsurprising. That's all that article I need to read on.
Right.
Gamers in Crimea lose access to Blizzard games due to the U.S. sanctions. This is unsurprising. When you let Russia invade your little area and then you don't do enough to actually get rid of them, then expect sanctions because the new guy that you support is in the wrong. So guess what? No World of Warcraft for people in Crimea. Or Diablo 3 or Hearthstone or whatever. Let's see, moving on to this story. Xbox One is region-free in China. I don't know why they get region-free. New Jersey lawmakers... I don't know. We are North America specific.
Yeah, I know. It's the whole region thing is stupid to me.
Well, they do it on purpose.
I know they do. It's so that they can sell something over there and sell something over here, and
Not necessarily.
It's
No. There are different regulations based upon where you sell things. There are different standards that you have to do. There's different, like, televisions and stuff. It's like they had to build consoles slightly different in, let's say, Europe because than they did in America because the programming was slightly different.
And the format for videos is different. And
yeah, they had the SCART cables that they would use in European televisions, and it's all different.
It's still stupid.
Not only that, but when they would sell games, specifically, let's say they would sell a Call of Duty game, and let's say it had Germans in them. There are certain requirements when you sell a game based upon like censorship and stuff in North America that's different than like Europe and Australia, because Europe, it's illegal to display the swastika.
Yeah, in Germany it was...
it still is.
Yeah, it was taboo for a long time to mention the Nazis or anything related to them.
No, it still is illegal. They had to completely change the games. Not only that, but these different games have like language packs that are different and that sort of thing. So they specifically cater some games. Some games don't have some content that other games have. It's not unsurprising that they have certain region-specific games. It would just be easier if everything was region-free and then they only had region-specific video games. But certain countries, because of tariffs and stuff has to work differently.
Yep.
It's much more complex than just, well, we just want more money.
But that's what it boils down to.
Well, it boils down to that, but it's much more complex than that because of like tariffs and stuff. There was one situation in, let's say, I think it was Australia, where Australia, it was something like they were trying to ban some sort of product because they thought it was dangerous for people. And they did it, but this company was able to go out of their way to reverse it based upon an old, like, tariffing law where...
Interesting.
Well, there's a law between Australia and
Britain?
Hong Kong where if
Hong Kong?
if Hong Kong sells goods to Australia, and they put certain bans on it that they're not supposed to do that it has to go between like a higher court and this and that. And because this company wasn't able to do business in Australia, what they did is they moved production to Hong Kong specifically so that they could ship from Hong Kong, so that when Australia put their foot down and refused the stuff, they were actually able to take it to court. So there's a lot more going on than just money. There's always some sort of weird finagling.
Right, but they wouldn't have done that if they didn't want the money.
Well, in that case, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
International laws and tariff laws and international trade are far more complex than simply, well, we just don't want them to have the same copy or whatever. It's actually cheaper and more financially viable for Nintendo to just make the same copy across the board. It costs more money for them to make specific region games.
Very true. But
it's not financially a good idea.
Which is why it needs to be done away with, but it's not going to.
Yeah, they can't. It's all government regulation. Anyway, New Jersey lawmakers want to increase penalties for swatting, which I think is a good idea.
Yes.
Under the current law, the penalty for reporting a false public alarm is a prison sentence of 3 to 5 years, fine of $15,000 or both. A civil penalty of $2,000 or actual costs incurred by emergency services responding to the false alarm. The amendment introduced on November 13th, 2014, makes reporting a false public alarm punishable by 5 to 10, in prison, a fine of up to $150,000 or both, and a civil penalty of $2,000 or the cost of deploying emergency services and law enforcement to the scene of a false alarm. I honestly think it should be more, but the increasing of it means that law enforcement as well as the courts are aware of this going on.
Yeah. You know, it's good when you see things like this where they're actually taking action in circumstances where people are abusing the system like they are for frivolous reasons.
I don't know if I read this before about... anyway, the creator of an online abuse prevention initiative, the founder, was targeted by swatting. Incidentally, the swatting attempt wasn't that big a deal because the individual had actually gone to the police station that I believe it's a she lived in and told them specifically, this is what I do online, this is what swatting is, I might get swatted. So when it happened, they were dubious, and they sent some people over, and they're like, oh, it's fine. So she sort of anticipated the situation, but she created a online abuse prevention initiative to help prevent online abuse, which is probably a good thing. I don't know much about the company, but it sounds like a good effort at least.
Right.
But swatting people suck.
Very much so.
Let's see. There are a lot of stories to go through. Connect for the Xbox One and Windows are consolidated into one SKU, which means you can just use the same thing for Windows and Xbox One. I don't know. There's a few more stories. Let's see. Comcast makes big play at offer. Comcast announced that it will start rolling out a new 2 gigabyte broadband service in Atlanta, Georgia next month. In addition to that, the company said that it will cover around 18 million American homes by the end of 2015. The news is an about-face for the company, who has said in the past that competitors building these high-speed networks in metropolitan areas throughout the country weren't needed because they exceeded the needs of most customers. I think they're trying to step it up because of the existence like Google Fiber or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And they realized they need to step up speeds as opposed to give the excuse of, well, most people don't need it that fast. And I was like, well, that's not up to you.
Right. It doesn't matter what speed you think I need. It's what speed I think I want.
Yeah, and if you're willing to pay for it, then screw it. I'm really not. I don't care about that. Halo Online modders undeterred by Microsoft DMCA takedown. Halo Online, if people recall, have been modding the whole thing, and they're actually centered in Russia. But Microsoft went to try and take them down, but they don't care. This is one of those things where, and this has happened multiple times, where different individuals, indie developers, have come out with games that they decided they wanted to make because the actual people who own the games haven't been making it. There was an attempt to do like a new Mega Man. There was an attempt. This one guy actually redid Mario 64 completely in HD and redid the models and whatnot.
Right.
And apparently it looked really good. He redid the entire first level, and Nintendo came down on him like a ton of bricks to stop him from developing what he was doing. And time again, when these things have happened, like with Mega Man and other games, what you need to do is get it done. Don't tell anybody about it, but get it done way before the developer finds out, or the publishers, the owners of the video games. And then release it online, and then let them know. Because at that point, you can't undo it, and it's already on the internet. Don't announce beforehand that you're making this game, because they will come down on you, and the project will never get off the ground. Make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. The only thing is that it's still illegal no matter what they do.
But they're not earning money off of it. That's the thing.
And they're still using somebody else's intellectual property.
That's not the point. If you're not earning money off of it, it's not actually illegal.
It is illegal.
No, there's no copyright infringement.
Yeah, it is. There is a copyright infringement.
No, there isn't. It's considered much like when SNL does stuff that there's no copyright infringement.
No, it isn't.
No,
if it's all rights reserved, they cannot use it without permission of the company, no matter what they want to do with it. SNL is slightly different because they get away with it under parody, which is covered by copyright.
I'm pretty sure you're wrong, but at any rate,
I used to work in this area.
Doing what with making copies?
No, I used to work for a group called COSL, which is the Center for Open and Sustainable Learning, and I had to get familiar with Creative Commons which is the copyrights where you can have a copyright and still share it with other people and let them use your intellectual property, and that's all different as
I worked with copyright when I worked
property.
in the photo department. We couldn't make copies of other people's work.
Right.
But it's it's like if you drew a picture of Mario, they couldn't come down on you for copyright infringement because it's your own work. If you took a picture of Mario and copied it and claimed it as your own, that's a completely different thing.
Right. You are correct in that instance, but
and what they're doing is not actually using the company's like programming or images. They're creating their own and then not actually benefiting from it. So, in essence,
Debatable.
It's like drawing your own picture. Well, clearly, but they're not actually doing anything to actually get money from it.
you're right. But they're
just making their own version of Mega Man, if you will.
But it's still
Because
copyright
we've run into
infringement.
that multiple times when I worked at the photo department, and we couldn't copy anything unless the actual individual had to sign whatever, and they had to
Right.
come in and sign something because we dealt with it constantly. But if you took it yourself, it wasn't that big a deal.
Right. This is slightly different than just drawing. They're actually creating a whole computer game from their intellectual property.
Yeah, but they're not using the other person's stuff. They're just making games with the same images. I don't know. It's a gray area, but I would argue that it's probably not as big a deal as they would think.
Oh, it probably isn't, but they're gonna stomp on you if you use their stuff.
Yeah, the illegality of it is, because at some point it's a free speech thing, which they've used multiple times in multiple scenarios.
True.
My mic is weird. Anyway, I can't hear you at the moment.
Really? I can
But-
hear you just fine.
Yeah, well, I have a little short on
Oh.
the thing where the mic plugs in.
All right.
There we go. I got it fixed. Let's finish out this podcast as
All
we've
right.
gotten to the end of it. We appreciate everybody hanging out with us today, listening to us argue about nonsense, and hopefully you'll be able to hang out with us on Part B. Anything you want to add, Jason?
Can't think of anything. Just don't do anything lethally stupid, and always be wary of when Hollywood takes something and tries to make it their own.
What are you referring to?
Oh, anything. When I actually wrote a blog post, long story short, I put at the end, whenever Hollywood takes something that has originality and
They'll completely change it.
yeah, they take out the originality and replace it with copies and hackneyed garbage. Anyway, so just be aware. They just want your money. They're not going to do anything completely new and innovative in Hollywood.
Yeah.
That doesn't
Well,
that doesn't make money.
Well, that's not what they do. They don't make anything new or innovative. They make money.
Yep.
Anyway, see you guys later. Bye.
Later.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Distracted Gamers podcast. If you like the show, follow Rhett and Jason, the world's two most lethally stupid internet personalities, on Twitter @DG Podcast, or check them out at www.thedistractedgamers.com. If you loved or hated what you've heard here, email them at thedistractedgamers.blogspot.com and share your feelings. Not that Jason will care, since he hasn't any, of course.